Welcome back, everybody, to Fantasy R&R. My name is Rob.
I'm Ryan, and this is Week 11 Waiver Grabs.
Ryan, let's start the show off with the jingle.
This is Fantasy with Rob and Ryan, Fantasy R&R.
All right, first player we're going to be highlighting here, Kahlil Bellage, running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. I believe that people were a little skeptical last week on him, kind of seeing how him and Joshua Kelly were going to split carries with Justin Jackson being out with that knee injury that he sustained. It does appear that Bellage is the go-to back with the Chargers. So just like anybody being a running back this year, all it takes is the guy getting the majority of the snaps to start him. I believe that we've seen enough with 2 weeks in a row of Bellage. Anything you'd like to add on Kahlil Bellage there, Ryan?
It's worth noting Kahlil Bellage is going to be good in PPR flex positions. He does catch the ball as well as run it. Like you said, Joshua Kelly's taking a back seat. Justin Jackson's out. I know Kahlil Bellage doesn't have the best track record, but you can pick him up this week and start him.
That's right. Moving on, we're looking at LaMichael Pittman Jr., wide receiver from the Indianapolis Colts. Looks as if Phillip Rivers has his new favorite target with the rookie Pittman. Ate up yardage. T.Y. Hilton more or less being a non-factor this season. Pittman looks to be the go-to guy with Indy. It'll be very interesting to see how he is utilized this upcoming week. But I believe Pittman is a really good pickup play if you're in need of some wide receiver help.
I absolutely agree. And speaking of wide receivers, Nyheim Hines is turning into one on that team, and he's also starting to take over the run game. I like Nyheim Hines as a possible pickup for Week 11. If you're struggling at the running back position like so many of us, this is a good time to jump on him. Jonathan Taylor's been a disappointment for most people. Jordan Wilkins, when he was getting volume, he wasn't really producing with it. Nyheim Hines now has more rush attempts last week than he did the previous 3 weeks. He leads the team at this point as the running back to grab for fantasy purposes.
Yes, and very similar to Hines real quick, I believe he was kind of being treated the way Bellage was with the Chargers. People were kind of skeptical to see how this was going to move going forward. Again, like you said, with the running backs behind him, but Hines does appear to be the go-to guy now with the Colts. Very similar situation. The Miami Dolphins running back situation has been the in and out with these running backs. Salvon Ahmed appeared to be the guy last week. Pretty safe pickup. Again, whoever's going to be fed the ball as a running back needs to be picked up. Ahmed, I believe, was 87 yards, led the running back situation with Miami in touches. Could be a very sneaky play with Myles Gaskin still being out.
And speaking of the Finns, what about that Dolphins defense, Rob? Do we go ahead and commit, tell people to pick them up for Week 11 and going forward?
Yes, absolutely. I believe people have been kind of waiting and seeing. I think Tua has been the story with the Miami Dolphins, but their defense has been showing up. They do get a very tasty matchup at Denver. Drew Lock might end up being out. Even if he isn't, he has not done anything to scare defenses away. And we have been looking at a pretty mighty, strong defense with Miami. Defenses have been a dime a dozen. If you don't have Pittsburgh, I feel like you kind of, or the Ravens defense for that matter, you kind of going in and out each week playing matchups. The Dolphins defense has been a pretty solid play week in and week out. And ESPN averaging 7.2 points a week, which, as long as you're getting something from a defense, you're happy to go with it. Being only 48.5% rostered, this defense should be picked up. Going from a defense, we're going back to running backs. Everybody needs running backs. And, albeit J.D. McKissic might not be the lead running back for the Washington football team, he is being treated like a mighty fine receiver in the backfield. 2 weeks again in a row of very good production, and it is looking to be a strong flex play going forward. Ryan, what do you think? What's your thoughts on J.D. McKissic?
If you are in a PPR league, this is a great ad this week. Antonio Gibson has been dominating that backfield. He's the one getting a lot of the rushing TDs. McKissic has the opportunity to get a lot of volume as a receiver. Alex Smith is going to be a little bit temperamental with the football, maybe even reserved because of what he saw happen to Kyle Allen, and then, of course, Alex Smith's past injury. We might see a lot of dump-offs to McKissic going forward for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. Alex Smith has not been the guy that's known to be chucking the ball down the field. He's a dink and doink kind of quarterback, and that plays very well for McKissic going forward. It appears we should have renamed this the running back show, because the next guy in line is LaMichael Pearman, running back for the New York Jets, the 09 New York Jets. It appears as if they're not playing for anything. Clearly, you might as well see what you got out of the rookie Gators running back for the Jets. Then they're saying he's supposed to be getting the touches. This has been a year with decimation in the running back position. So if you can pick up a guy and get ahead of the curve for somebody that could going forward be the lead guy, albeit it is with New York, I mean, he's a good plug and play, and maybe you just pick him up this week and just stash him to see what he does.
Yeah, I agree with that. You could probably, even in your deeper dynasty leagues, go ahead and stash the guy. Absolutely. And that way you've got someone next year that you can see if he ends up starting for you.
Absolutely. And just a little bit more on him. I mean, if he has a big game, there's not a doubt in my mind that Frank Gore is going to be taking a bench going forward. All right, and looking at a play that was potential last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, Alan Lazard, wide receiver from the Green Bay Packers, is projecting to play this week. The way Rodgers has been spinning the ball, I'd love to have any of these wide receivers for the Packers on my team. Scantling had the big game last week. That potentially could be Lazard if he picks up where he left off only 3 weeks into the season. To begin the season, had 2 touchdowns with over 300 yards receiving. Be very interesting to see how he plays out this week.
Yeah, I like Lazard as a play. He developed a rapport with Aaron Rodgers. So if he's out there on your waiver wires because of the off and on injury, go ahead and snag him for this week. I was talking a little bit about Scantling being a potential add last week. I like Lazard this week now that we know he's probably coming back as opposed to being stuck on IR this last week. Give him a shot if you're weak at wide receiver or flex.
That's right. Nella, we haven't talked about running backs enough here in this episode. Let's get into Damien Harris, the New England Patriots running back, who seems to kind of be making some distance from everybody else on that the running back depth chart. Ryan, what do you got here on Damien Harris for me?
I absolutely love Damien Harris. He was drafted in 2019 by the Patriots and didn't get a whole lot of playing time, maybe only even attempted a handful of carries. This year, with the absence of Sony Michel and the wishy-washy backfield of the Patriots, the way everybody's a role player like Burkhead or James White, Damien Harris has emerged as the lead ground back over the past few weeks especially. It's worth noting he has 300-plus yard games this season. Not a whole ton of touchdowns yet, but obviously we can see the talent from this kid from Alabama. I say if he's out on your waiver wire, you need to snatch him up this week. This is the time to do it. He's not going to be there after this week. I think he's available in 58% of ESPN leagues. Go out there and get yourself some Damien Harris.
Okay, guys, and I promise this is the last running back we'll talk about in this show. This is somebody I had highlighted last week, Gus Edwards for the Baltimore Ravens, albeit Lamar Jackson is the one getting the majority of the rushing yards. I feel as if Edwards is starting to make leeway to be the guy for Baltimore. We had J.K. Dobbins, 5 carries, 13 yards, 1 reception, 1 yard. Not going to cut it. Mark Ingram came back from his ankle injury, 5 carries, 5 yards, 2 receptions, 24 yards. Not going to cut it. Edwards, on the other hand, 7 carries for 42 yards, 1 reception for 31 yards. A blind man could see that Gus Edwards, right now, on paper, is statistically leading that backfield. I think this might be a week where Ingram might end up getting phased out here shortly due to if this is an extent, if his lack of yardage had anything to do with that ankle injury, and if that creeps up back again. J.K. Dobbins right now is just a name. He's a rookie that they took from Ohio State. I get it. But Gus Edwards is projecting to be that guy in the backfield. I'm very interested to see how this pans out come this week.
Okay, and to close out, these are going to be some last-minute desperation plays. Are you in a deep league? Do you play multiple flexes? How desperate are you to fill a position this week that could have some upside? Well, I got a couple of names that might surprise you. One of them is going to be Taysom Hill. This is going to be one of those wishy-washy weeks for ESPN where you're still allowed to put him in as a tight end. You don't want to put him in as a QB, even though you can use him as a QB. I would stick him in the flex position, obviously, if you are desperate for someone like this. But the reason he's got some upside this week is with Drew Brees' rib injury. Taysom Hill is a gadget quarterback who we could see get some passing plays, but he's also going to be swung out if Jameis Winston comes along into the starting position, and Taysom Hill could do some of those Cordarrelle Patterson type plays that I was talking about last night, where we see him get a return, or he's swept out to the side, has a flea flicker or two. Taysom Hill's got some serious TD upside. Only a couple of touchdowns on the season so far, but one came from rushing, one came from receiving. With Drew Brees out and Jameis Winston in, Taysom Hill could potentially be a sneaky play. And that brings me to Jameis Winston. If you're low on QB or someone's on a bye for you this week, Jameis Winston, just because he was opening up his turnover shop every week last season, doesn't mean that he doesn't produce fantasy-wise. I mean, the guy can throw for yardage. He can get you a couple touchdowns. If you can withstand having a couple points lost from his turnovers, I think he's a quarterback that could get you 15 or more this week.
All right, guys, that's everything we have for our Week 11 waiver grabs. For Fantasy R&R, I'm Rob.
I'm Ryan, and join us next time for our Week 11 preview.
That's what fantasy with Rob and